Good evening.
We should.
Kupka.
Present.
Craig Pavasich.
Here.
Dan Nicholas.
Here.
Rick Pavanato.
Here.
We have a quorum. Let's stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, because of course I didn't bring my...
It's easier to say.
Okay, first on our docket today is the approval of minutes from the March 19th business meeting and the April 9th special workshop meeting.
I move that we accept those minutes.
Second.
Thank you. And we have
Terry?
Craig Pavasich.
Aye.
Dan?
Dan Nicholas.
Aye.
Rick Pavanato.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the first reception of visitors. This meeting agenda includes 2 opportunities for comments from the audience. The first is intended for audience members to address the board about any agenda item on which the board will vote. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to recommendations and reports of the superintendent.
First item of the evening in a jam-packed agenda is the third quarter financial report, and I'm going to turn this over to Mark.
Okay. First of a number of reports tonight, so I hope you don't get too tired listening to me. But how could you, right? The fund balances for
Absolutely.
this quarter are $2 million higher than they were last year. Looks great on paper, but the key thing really is that we've collected more money from the state, and that's with the reformulation. So they reformulated the general state aid under the evidence-based model, and they've added some of the categorical payments. I ran through that in a schedule for you a few months ago. And so now they're paying that as we go. So they're actually getting more dollars up front. There are still some categoricals that have been left behind and haven't been paid yet. And we may eventually lose some of that, but right now we're being told we'll get it all, just to be a matter of time. But that's really the key factors that we've accelerated our state aid collections, or the state has accelerated their payments, depending on how you want to look at that. If we go to the revenue section, you can see it more directly. We always have property taxes that are 100% collected because of the way we defer our revenues into the next year. Replacement taxes is a little slow. I did check with the Department of Revenue, but they're still projecting that we'll get that $797,000. That's the second line item. Our interest income is very clearly going to exceed our amount budgeted by the end of the year. Rates are starting to move up pretty quickly. Our liquid account, where we just keep our, similar to a money market account where we keep our daily cash, is earning 1.7 or 1.8% now, which is much better than it was when we were earning 0.25 about a year or so ago. So that's going to help us. And we have some TAWs out right now, actually, too, that are earning more than that. So we're going to exceed the interest income by the end of the year. There's really no big surprises, except if you look down the second from the bottom, the state aid, that's the big comparison there. It's 88% collected compared to 45% last year at this time. So that's the cash flow thing that is very positive for us. Everything else looks fairly normal at this stage.
What's a tall?
Oh, I'm sorry, tax anticipation warrant, that's when an investment that we make by buying other school districts' tax anticipation warrants.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. And expenditures, Tony? There we go, so expenditures paid. Pretty much on track. We're a little further ahead in the school year this point in time, with fewer days left, so we were expecting a few things to be up. We have had, I think really there's 2 areas here. One would be in the capital outlay. We're pretty much expended this year, so we don't have much left to go from our operating funds. Obviously, we're going to be really firing up the master facility plan. Work will begin in May, and a first payment we expect to be due at our June meeting. So we will be issuing some bonds in June. There'll be a resolution in the next board meeting in May to authorize us to move ahead and sell that bond, so we have the cash flow from the first bond, and I'll be talking about that in the master facility plan update in a little more detail. And tuition is probably going to come out a little bit high this year, even though, we stepped up the amounts we have compared to last year. We budgeted $4.7 million. Most of that is special ed. There's also some voc ed in there. We have had an increase in the number of both voc ed kids attending and special needs students coming into our district who are fairly involved. So this is one of those years where we got a little bit more of a surprise, even though we tried to plan for an increase. We're seeing a little bit bigger increase than we were hoping. So we're going to watch that through the end of the year. That's really about it. That's the fast 30,000-foot view here. Any questions?
No. Looks like none.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional textbooks?
I'll turn this one over to Gina.
You may recall a couple months ago, I brought several books to the board to put on review, and later this evening, you'll be voting on those textbooks. However, after I brought that initial group of books, there was one that was sent in late. It is the German textbook. It's the level 3 in a series in which the students have been in level 1 and level 2 of those books, so it makes sense to continue in that series. It was just an oversight that it came in late. So I'm bringing that one to the board to say that we would like to adopt this book as well. Just sharing that information with the board tonight. Voting will come in May. When it was determined that we had this one that I would bring, I knew in advance that our AP European teachers were wanting to put through a proposal for a new textbook. However, they had missed the deadline. And with AP courses, the College Board strongly recommends that your textbook be 10 years old or less than 10 years old. And we would be beyond that at this point, just by a year, but still, we would be pushing it. And it's not that the course wouldn't be approved or that we couldn't run the course, but since this other one was coming in later than we'd expected, I said, well, do you want to bring this one forward? So I'm bringing to you 2 textbooks. One is the German level 3, and the other is an advanced placement European textbook. And then the board will vote on those in a month.
Questions? Okay. Master facility plan progress.
All right. A couple of things coming out of last week that we said we would talk to the board about. So we did have our kickoff meeting last Friday with the core planning team. And then board members sent over their list. So I'll send this out in a little bit of a more readable format to everybody, to the board, and it's also up as a doc by itself in the packet. But this is where kind of everybody ended up based on their areas that they volunteered to be part of. So we ended up in about every category 2 board members, which is great. I was hoping to get at least 1, so we're doing great in there. So we'll send that out so every board member knows what they're on. And of course, you'll get meeting invites and information, whatever, as we move forward. If you go to the next slide. Oop, too far. Go back.
I think we both hit them.
Doolin.
All right, trying to stop there. There we go.
All right, we talked last week, there was questions about our timeline. This is kind of where we ended up, is our first general draft timeline of what's coming. Obviously, as we get further along, you'll start to see Gantt charts and project timelines and those kinds of things, but this is just kind of the big overarching timeline of projects. As we mentioned last week, and you've seen the documents for tonight, the contracts that get us rolling on the air conditioning implementation. That's all instructional spaces that will take place over this summer, and we'll get more into the details around that project later tonight. We're kicking off, as of last Friday, that next one, the design, programming, phasing, all of that. We're now underway, and we expect that the design portion will take from now until about next spring to complete all of those portions. In that designing phasing will be a phase 1, which will be the construction projects that we'll anticipate that we'll be able to get a hold of right away and get in place next summer. So it's almost like generally speaking, a two-prong approach. The first prong will have a set of projects that we can get done, designed, bid out, everything in place for next summer. And then there's everything else that falls after that. We're calling that phase 2. We don't know yet what projects or things will necessarily fall into 1 and 2, but we know that we want to get as much done as we can as quickly as possible. But that all happens through this design stuff. So we have a summer's worth of work that we'll plan out for next year, and then the rest. So that'll go underway. One of the things that's planned between really now and somewhere in the fall is we plan on going out for a request for quote proposal for construction manager and get an idea of what's out there around that topic. We've talked with the architects and we've talked with a variety of other school districts to try to find out when is the right time to bring that person on board. And it sounds like a couple months into the design planning, we'll have enough information to get a good response back on that project where we can get some realistic kind of numbers. So that'll happen in the fall.
Okay.
So I think that's it for my updates from last week. I'll take any questions on any of those, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mark, who's brought some updated information on how the financing will work.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we have any kind of plan about notifying our immediate neighbors to both campuses about the construction and the noise and the
Oh,
traffic and all
absolutely.
that?
Yeah, and there'll actually be any neighbors that are impacted by outdoor site changes. We will deliver something to each door on an evening where those neighbors will be invited, just them, in.
Okay.
To take a look at the designs and be able to provide feedback and ask questions, because they're impacted differently than the general community. So there'll be some areas around south and some areas around north where that'll happen.
Okay, well, thank you. Anything else? Great, exciting. Audio participation?
Nope.
I'm going to kick off.
Oh, I'm
with this.
sorry, finances.
I'm gonna-
How could I forget?
The construction is really still very loosely put together. We don't know exactly how it's going to phase, and we don't know exactly the timing for all of it in terms of when payouts are going to be needed, but we do have a projected formula for what or at least a presentation, what we think the funding could mimic. The actual issuance, though, will change based on the real construction phasing when we really know what's going on. We have up to 5 years after the referendum has been confirmed to issue the bonds, and then we have 3 years, once we collect or issue any one of those bonds, we're going to do 4 different issues. As soon as we issue that bond, then the clock starts running. We have 3 years to spend the funds that are in that, from that particular bond. And that's so that more than covers our period of time that we need. We will probably issue them over a 4-year period of time, and very likely have it expended probably in a total of maybe 1 or 2 years after that last issue. But this projection assumes that you can see on the bottom, the first issue will be about $9 million, the second $40 million, the third issue $40 million, and then the fourth issue $47.6 million to tie up the 136.6 issuance. It's jumping ahead on me. That wasn't me. Okay. This represents, this blue bar represents the just about $5.9 million of bonds that we have from the prior referendum in 97. They were actually refinanced, but this is the last leg of those, and we've been talking about that. This is the $132 cost on a $300,000 home right now. And so our first issuance is going to be $9 million, a little over $9 million, and it'll really come over a period of 3 years. This is kind of unusual. You usually don't load it up in the first year. If this was the only thing we were doing, we'd spread it over the 20-year period of time. But we needed to start out of the gates with this just to get that $9 million point set. because that's what we knew our total cost would be on an annual basis going forward. So the numbers on the bottom, the calendar references that's the 2018 levy that would be paid in 28, people would pay taxes in the 2019 calendar year. So, this is just the principal and interest payments out. So you're going to see the total of all of the bars when I get to the end of this, you're going to see are more than 136 million, because they also include about $68 million of interest over the life of the 23 years of issuance. So the second year issuance is going to come in here. And we see this is more normal. We're going to keep the 9 million, and then we're going to feather it out over the 20 years. Next year issuance comes in, same thing, than the last year as well. So this is the total pattern right now. If we need to accelerate, it could increase the length of the time that we have the bonds out, which would raise our interest costs, but it should also give us a lower interest rate, because interest rates are rising. So, and this assumes a pretty healthy increase over what the current market is. By this last red issue, it's assuming a full % higher now than what a bond would normally expect to be at that time, which is, we are seeing some big increases, but we don't think it's going to go up by more than 1% over the next couple of years. It could, but this is our best projection right now. And that's really about it. We just wanted to see how it's going to lay out. And this really has been on the website in a different format. We've had it in a schedule that we put out there showing how it would be with a graph. And it's more like a Excel worksheet type of format. This is just putting it into a different format. That's it.
Any questions on bond financing? All right.
This is really a testament to how well you all prep us. I just want to say.
Well, we've
Not
showed
that
it
we're
to
not
you like
interested.
4 different ways before.
We've been
tonight.
well prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it for master facility plan.
Okay, board member audio participation. Remember, we talked about this in conjunction with starting in July, starting earlier, and not that we would encourage board members to participate from a distance, but in the event that somebody was caught in traffic or whatever.
So last week, none of us knew what the answer to this was, so Julie and I Julie went and pulled the policy. I rode her coattails. And the key part of this policy states, so this is policy 2.220, school board meeting procedures. A quorum of the board must be physically present at all board meetings. A majority of the full membership of the board constitutes a quorum. Provided a quorum is physically present, like tonight, a board member may attend the meeting by video or audio conference if he or she is prevented from physically attending because of personal illness or disability, employment or district business, a family or other emergency. A board member who attends meeting by audio or video means, as provided in this policy, may participate in all aspects of the board meeting, including voting on any item. So it allows for those 3 things: if you're sick, if you're held up because of business, or an emergency of some sort. So kind of out of it would be things like vacations or those kinds of things. But otherwise, our policy already allows for remote participation for those 3 reasons.
So if you're held up because of traffic, does that count as business?
It sure does.
All right.
Yep.
Any questions or concerns? Cool, covered.
So what we'll start doing is bringing a conference phone in and have it ready in case we have to dial anybody in. And if board members let us know in advance of what a good number is, then we can dial a board member in. Any other questions on that one?
Have we had any Freedom of Information Acts?
Oh, yes.
Requests?
6,
Oh, my.
and we've answered them all.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda, but before we do, I'd like to remove acceptance of donation District 99 Educational Foundation grant for discussion. Any other item you wish to be?
We can leave any item in for discussion. We only have to remove it if somebody thinks that they're going to vote differently after that discussion.
Very well. I'd just like to discuss it, because I'm not going to vote differently.
And we can pull it out even after discussion. We could amend.
Yeah.
And
that's fine.
before we move it, Pete has we're walking in a couple of changes with personnel. So could you update them on the
Sure.
items for that?
So we have two amendments that are already in this evening's board documents, but they're different from what was posted last Thursday. So in Section A, under leave of absence classified, we had a typo. So Zachary Heilman's leave of absence will be 1/17/2019, not 1/17/2018 was originally posted because he's taking it second semester next year. And then in Section B, we added a section for retirement certified and added Steve Ruffalo to that section, retiring in 2021.
So before we moved it, we want to make it clear that we had modified those portions of it. So, that all being said,
So let's just talk about the Education Foundation for a
Well,
moment.
we need
No,
a
we
motion
need a motion.
Still
first.
need the motion first.
Okay, I'll make a motion for the Board of Education to approve the consent agenda, which includes A, personnel report, appointment, administrator appointment, certified contract adjustment, certified transfer position classified, leave of absence classified. B, personal report, retirement administration, retirement classified.
And retirement certified, I apologize, I did not change the motion there, so. retirement certified as
C,
well.
financial pages. D, donation of Lane Newberry paintings to the Downers Grove Museum. E, SACID, Board of Control Governing Board appointment resolution. F, appointment to DuPage Area Occupational Education System Board of Directors. And G, acceptance of donation District 99 Education Foundation grant.
Thank you, Rick.
I'll second.
Terry seconds.
now we can discuss anything in there
Yeah.
that you'd like.
Okay, well, I'd like to discuss the 99 Foundation.
Sure.
Okay.
Would you like to discuss it, or would you?
Well,
like to-
This is the 360-degree camera.
To
yeah.
to my kind, just so people are aware of it.
Well, the 360-degree camera is pretty cool, and they want to be able to take it, oh, gee.
Costa Rica this summer.
The Costa Rica? Okay. Because I guess the way it works is it'll take a picture all the way around, and then you can visualize it. And we just thought this was a really cool opportunity for our students to see this and then be able to bring it back, and just like they were there.
I would just like to thank the foundation again. It's because of the foundation that
Yeah.
grants like this can go out, and they can help support our educators and their,
Yeah, and you know, we just thought it would be a great thing for our students to see and to participate in, because it's just for the field trip, but I think when they come back, they'll be using it for a lot of other things. You know.
I'm sure Mr. Hines will find a lot of things.
Oh, yeah, I don't think he'll let it get cobwebs on it by any means.
So that was the only thing I wanted to bring out, was a thank you to the
Okay.
foundation. Anything else? Hearing none?
Rick Cavanato,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye. Consent agenda carries. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of textbooks presented at the February 26th board meeting.
As Gina mentioned earlier, this is, oh, I'm sorry, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion for the Board of Education to approve the textbooks presented at the February 26, 2018 board meeting for the 2018-2019 school year.
Second.
Yeah.
As Gina mentioned earlier, these are the textbooks that came back, were originally presented in February. And Gina, we had one comment and no concerns, right?
And one comment, and that comment was shared with our architecture teachers as well as our CT department chairs.
Any questions for Gina?
Rick Cavanato,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion carries. Talk about approval of the GMAX construction management contract.
You have a motion and a second?
I'm
I'm-
asking for somebody to motion, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
I move that we accept this professional contract management service
The
contract.
GMAX construction management contract?
Yes.
Second motion.
Terry, you did. No, we're here, approval of GMAX construction. For the air conditioning project,
Oh,
yes.
yes, for air conditioning, sorry.
All right. So I will note that what this contract does is it limits the cost of construction and construction management services to $6,110,226 for the air conditioning project at each campus. And I'm going to turn this over to Mark and Jim to highlight the key parts of the contract and what it will do for us.
This is actually, yeah, I don't even know if there's anything, I don't think I have a visual for this part. The GMAX contract isn't something we've used before, but I've talked to a number of my cohorts and they are using it. It's very common, especially because we've had kind of a volatile market after 2008's recession and where everybody was starving. Now things are starting to heat up again. And so one of the biggest questions is, well, one of a couple is where the bids are going to come in. And we always do a very good job. In fact, we did a good job with this bunch of bids because we had the design done up front and we got out really early into the market. So we think we're the first one on their list. And so they were all hungry and we got some really good bids. But that's the next agenda item, actually, the action item for you, is to consider those. The GMAX contract, though, limits our liability. And at first I misunderstood it and I didn't like it because it sounded like, okay, we're going to get a guaranteed max. That means the construction manager is going to get a guaranteed amount. But it doesn't work that way. So if the bids, they have come in lower, anything that comes in lower, any costs that come in lower, it doesn't go to them. It's not a guarantee to them. They have to show us the accounting, the bids we know. It really just goes into the contingency amount. And then if it's not used because of problems during the construction, we don't pay it out. It doesn't go to them. So it has a protection on the high side, but there's no real damage on the low side unless we totally don't understand what's going on with the job and they, put information in there, put things in there, run up costs that we aren't aware of. But we feel we're pretty comfortable being able to assess that. In fact, we have a budget set for all of their costs for the whole project in advance. They've already agreed what they think it should be, and we agree with it. And that's how this 6.1 million contract amount was determined. It's a very specific, detailed listing of the amount of time that they'll have for construction managers, site supervision. Actually, the backdoor costs are behind the door costs for their administration and for their vice president in charge of the area for his time and materials on it. So we feel pretty comfortable with it. This is a good trial run for us because I think we would like to use this for the larger project. It's a big concern of mine. The architects estimate these values based on square footage and they do their best, but you never know what you're going to run into. We could run into some really high construction costs in a couple of years. And so the sooner we can get a lock on the entire project for the scope of the work, for me, the better. Although we do have to wait till design is done so there's at least substantial design is done so that a construction manager can actually study it and understand what his exposure is on the project and really understand the scope of it. So that'll be further off, but this is for the summer project. Jim did a really good job getting ahead with the architects, asking them to do the design work for this. We knew that someday, with or without the referendum, we would likely do this air conditioning somehow. Might be 5 years, 10 years down the road, but it was high on our priority. So we knew that we weren't wasting our cost having them do the detailed engineering to figure this out. So we were able to get a jump on the whole market. So we were really excited about this. And that's the GMX part. I think Jim's going to talk about the next agenda item once we're asking for approval.
A couple of notes on the contract. The CM fees are not the 3%. That's really low. We kind of negotiated back and forth, so I'm very happy that we're at 3% on the construction management fees. And as Mark said, I went back and forth with White, just the personnel that are going to be at the buildings, the superintendents, how many hours. Really, when you do these kind of contracts, especially with construction management, it is all the meets and net general conditions and these folks that are at your buildings. So you got to know your people and how many hours a day and how long you want them at your campuses as oversight. And that's where you really can go back and forth and save some money. So I'm really happy with the contract. I think we did well. We got some good numbers, and I like the format. And I think moving forward, it's something that we should consider. Questions on GMAX contract?
No, if it can save us money in the long run, that's a really excellent idea. You know,
Well, I think-
because it's locked in, right?
I think it's great because you can negotiate a lot, but I think the bigger liability piece is we safeguard the district. For example, if we lock that price in and the bids were just outrageous, bad market, not enough contractors, time's running out, and they ballooned to high numbers, and it was over a $6.1 million total, the liability's on White. They're going to pay the rest of that. That's the highest cap you can go. Now, if it's lower like it is after the bids, we get that money back. So it's almost like a safeguard. I like that, just in case the market's crazy, and you get some, and I like it for big projects. You know, the smaller ones that we've done throughout the years for capital, I kind of know what's going on, and there's not going to be that huge variance. On these, the unknowns or the market could get crazy, and it really locks us in and puts the liability on whoever construction managers were using on the GMAX.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Okay, all right.
Jim, what will not be air-conditioned after this project? Will there be any portions of the school that will not be air-conditioned?
Great question. The field houses will not be, and, you know, we discussed this a little bit at cabinet this past week on hallways. So we're going to be getting our classrooms completely conditioned. We have library spaces, we have auditoriums, now we have our gymnasiums. The north side of town, we get the purple gym, south where he has the capability. And then really with the hallways, if you notice, if you walk the buildings in a hot day, if you go towards the wing where it's air conditioned, the hallway just seems a little cooler. So it's, you know, between the doors opening, closing, passing periods, you're getting that cooler air, and it's making the hallways a little better. But the field houses and will not be the big areas like that. But just about everything else is.
Is that pretty standard for high schools in the area
Yeah.
that don't do the
Normally,
hallways?
gymnasiums are not as well, but since we hold indoor graduation at both campuses, that was something that we wanted to do. A large gymnasium would usually not be. And South doesn't turn it on unless they absolutely need it for the graduation. So they're not at 70 degrees for volleyball camp in the summer. They're non-air conditioned.
Well, if it's 95 out, will they turn it on to be 80?
We have not in the past.
Oh, okay, all right. And nobody's complained?
There's been complaints.
But, you know, that is, I have to say, that is a concern of mine, because
Yeah.
I don't understand why I've grown to accept the fact that we're not going to air condition the field houses, but I would hope if it's too hot, do we ever stop? We will cease activities in non-air conditioned spaces, right?
Correct.
If
We
that
don't want
area
students
is to
falling
an
over.
extreme temperature, we're going to do something.
Okay.
So maybe I didn't answer that correctly. We're going to do something, either doors are being opened, practices are being canceled, and/or we're putting the air on.
Yeah, but if the field house doesn't have it, you can't
The
turn it
doors,
on.
Open the doors and
either
cancel
you-
class.
You see what the temperature is. If it's hitting 90 or above, then the coaches have to make a decision with the athletic director. Because we've had those days where.
That okay?
In spring, it's very warm when we get back after the summer break, and you got physical education classes in there, maybe 6 of them. And it's hot.
Okay.
Any idea of the increased costs of electric bills for the district in
I
connection
was going to
with?
talk a little bit more in the next part, but I can talk
Okay.
about it now, because we're increasing, obviously, chillers. But I think there'll be a slight increase, and if you bear with me, I can kind of walk you through it. At both campuses, we're eliminating, demoing, replacing existing old, not efficient chillers, both sides of town, to the tune of 250 tons, almost 280 tons of chilling capacity. We're bringing in new, great efficiency, so that's going to offset a little bit. Now, remember, we're also increasing tonnage, about 200 tons at each campus, for not only these 90 classrooms district-wide, but for the gymnasium and then for any of the master facility plan projects that we're planning on doing for the future. You got to have that capacity in order to, if we build the commons, and if we build it, we got to be able to air condition it as well, and we need that capacity. So there's going to be an increase. I'm hoping it's not going to be a lot. I don't think it will because we're eliminating those ones that are really eating the meter right now.
The other key change is that in the past, in the evenings, we open up the buildings, we run ventilation, we run fans. There's a lot of those things that won't need to take place anymore because the building will be cooled. So there's a lot of add-ins that won't be there anymore.
There's also,
Staff time as well. That's not energy efficiency, but all the time that every night of going and opening up the buildings and then closing down the buildings, that all changes as well.
there's also inherent in the master facility plan, the elimination of exterior walls that are currently not as energy efficient as, so for instance, you take the courtyard at North High right now, you've got 4 exterior walls right there, and that gets enclosed. You have a roof over it, so you've significantly reduced the amount of area that you have to the outside, and as well, adding for the commons at South, you're basically duplicating some wall space, but that new thing you're putting in is going to be more energy efficient in terms of as compared to what's there right now. So we'll have some offsets too, just in the nature of what we're doing, updating the some of the existing spaces and adding new spaces that are going to meet more stringent energy code requirements than what were in place when the buildings were built and added on to previous.
And on the flip side, if we have some natural sunlight on the heating end of it, that's going to help as well.
Sure. You said hallways are not going to be air conditioned. What about the learning commons?
That will be incorporated in the cafeteria. It will be.
Okay.
That's a big open space, and it's going to be conditioned.
Okay. So you get some.
Quite frankly,
And
you
that'll
go in these
move out to
buildings,
the hallways.
into the areas that are
So,
conditioned. The hallway does not feel bad
Okay.
whatsoever. Actually, it's odd, because you'll go through the unconditioned area, and as you go further away from that conditioned hallway, it gets a little more, as you get closer, you get a little, it's kind of a mix, and it keeps creeping down the hallway.
How much are we heating the hallways right now?
We have small heaters in the hallways that compensate for anything that's really cold, but as with air conditioning, it's getting the heat from all the other,
My point.
Yeah, but when you have hundreds of students in the hallway,
factor in that all these rooms are conditioned, the doors opening and shutting, all the big areas.
okay.
Yeah, with the commons, that's going to spread out
You're going to need
a lot.
more
because
ductwork from the
that's-
top
yeah.
on that. So that's a bigger area, and you're going to have to tap off those tonnage of the chillers that we're adding.
And it makes sense too, because in those common areas, you're going to have a number of students concentrated in one area and staying there for a period of time, whereas in the halls, we're hoping with part of what we're doing with these commons improvements, that we're not going to have kids
Sitting on
congregating
the
for long periods of time in the hall, like they do right now.
You might feel a couple degrees difference between
Yeah.
a classroom and a hallway, but I'll tell you, it'll be good. You won't even notice.
And I should know this, and I apologize, I don't remember this. Is any of this going to be solar powered?
We are always looking at the possibility of doing something as we go into our design phase, and we've talked with White, Hank, Mark, and I, that's always in our minds moving forward, and if there's an opportunity, a grant, a chance of doing something that's within the budget and we can do it, we certainly will.
But it wasn't ever outlined within that original scope of the project.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Not as a priority or a bullet point, but there are so many things that are going to be, that weren't detailed to that level. So it's good to hear that's something we're going to think about doing.
Yeah, we're looking at other funding sources and ways other school districts have taken on solar.
Cool.
Wind turbine.
Well, with the weather we've been having lately, wind turbine might be better.
Yeah, really.
Windmills are out of the question.
Yeah, good. Yes. Please, yeah. I don't think we want a huge wind turbine on, oh my gosh.
Any other questions on the
Move out of time.
GMAX? Because then Jim will get into the actual bids that came in around this project. But we first need to approve the GMAX contract.
Yeah.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Trey Greenwich.
Aye.
Jen Nicholas.
Aye.
Rick Cavanato.
Aye.
John Renner.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion
Yeah,
carries.
Don just asked me this
we have a
question.
motion?
I'm wondering,
Yes.
that caught me off
Yes,
guard.
Terry moved
Okay.
and Dan seconded.
Second.
we discussed. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, otherwise we wouldn't have discussed it.
very good.
What was your question, Mike? Was that your question?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay, approval of the air conditioning project aggregate bid.
We get a motion and a
Okay, I'll
second.
make a motion for the Board of Education to approve the combined list of low acceptable bidders awarded contracts in the aggregate amount of $2,870,925 for the air conditioning project North and South High School.
Second.
Assuming that's what this adds up to. I didn't get my calculator out.
All right.
Okay, we talked about it a little bit, so I'll try to get into more detail on some other items. As was mentioned earlier, we started working on this in July of 2017, so 7 months into it. We did the bid opening February 21st, so 7 hard months to get here to air condition these classrooms at both campuses and the gymnasium at North. Total 9 packages. We split it up that way. I worked with White, and we had 39 total bidders. Separate to this, I attached the detailed bids, who bid, and what the numbers were. I'm very happy with what came in, much lower than our estimates, so happy that we had some aggressive bidding. Couple notes that I'd like to tell the board tonight. All the bids were under budget estimates, so that's kind of encapsulates the whole group there. Early on in the project, we had a little scare with Commonwealth Edison. We need to add a 3,000 amp breaker panel to North High School to charge up these new chillers. At first, we did not think we had that power off the transformer at that side of town. So that meant we would have to bring in a whole new line through all the neighbors' front yards.
Oh, no.
So, was very nervous for a few weeks there. Good news, there was enough power there, we don't have to do it. So that would have been a huge cost.
Wind turbines at North.
Yeah, yeah.
Solar panels.
And solar panels.
So just wanted to let you know that at the beginning, when we were investigating and seeing what we can or cannot do with this project, there was that little scare, but knock on wood, we came out with good news. So we have enough power off that transformer that's on the south side of the building, and we'll bring the new power to the boiler house below to feed these new chillers. Lead removal, probably wondering what that is. So the chillers at North have to go on top of the white gym on the south end, and the white gym is a very old building, and structurally, we were worried that the units would be too heavy and we would not be able to hold it up, so we had to do some testing. So we need to add additional support inside in the ceiling rafters, which the beams, which were the original painting, tested positive for lead. So we need to do that removal. That is the bid package for the lead removal. So we're going to eliminate, abate that 1/3 of the structure so we can add on some more structure to reinforce for the chillers on the roof. Wanted to let you know that. Those will be beams. So that's just about 1/3 of the white gym. Electrical bid, there is an alternate one I threw in there. As I thought this through and I was getting ready to bid out, as you know, we had a capital project line item for South High School to do their small gymnasium with LED lighting. We had budgeted $95,000 for that project, but I thought to myself, hey, we're going to get some aggressive big hitters here with this electrical. This is a big project. Why don't we throw in an alternate for that lighting, and they can do both and see if it comes in at a good number. And it did. It came in at 32 grand, so I'm going to accept that alternate. So that saved the district a lot of money.
We might want to think about that.
Go, Jim.
That's fantastic.
So I always try to be creative and think out of the box, and, sometimes it works. I can
That's what
always
it
say
takes.
no to the alternate and go back out the bid, but it came in well, and, we can use that money towards something else with capital. So that is the rationale for that alternate one. I think that's all the little in-betweens. Bidders are familiar, except for the lead removal, but they've worked with White before, so they're familiar with them. They've all met our requirements. So with that said, asking the board tonight to approve the combined list of low acceptable bidders with contracts in the aggregate amount of $2,870,925 for the air conditioning project at North and South High Schools.
I just have one quick question.
Certainly.
The beams that we've got to do a third of them, are we going to have to do the other 2/3 later because they're lead?
No,
Lead?
we're going to leave that alone. It's encapsulated, we're not going to touch it, even with future building. So we're really only screwing in and disrupting some parts of that 1/3. So if you look at it that way, and that's what we're afraid of. We'd rather be proactive and do the right thing. We're not touching the other beams whatsoever, even in future building of the master facility plan. So why spend that money if we don't have to? That
Right,
was the
yeah,
rationale.
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be doing anything with those because it seems to me like it would
Do
be
it all at
cheaper
one
to
time.
do it all at one time rather than come back, in a year and replace the other.
Jerry, I had the
2/3.
same question.
Very good.
Pardon?
I had the same question.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just saying that I think that's a great question because I had the same one.
Great minds. think alike.
Yeah. and
Jim,
frightening.
just a question on the roofing bid. You're familiar and comfortable with this company that won the roofing bid? The reason I'm asking is when I looked at the details, that was the only one that bid that won was less than half of the nearest bid and like a third of the other three. So it just seemed abnormally low. So I just want to make sure you're comfortable with that company.
Great question, I am. And Crowther, they did the South High roof last year, and did a very good job. In fact, they did an excellent job. I worked with them many times in the past. They are an odd company. They'll be aggressive and hit and want and attack certain areas that they want to put their crew out in. I think they were a little closer to what the budget estimate was. The others were way over, so they were just coming in and throwing numbers to see if they can grab it. So I'm very comfortable with Crowther. If it was anybody else that I'd never worked with, I would have been a little hesitant.
If you're good, I'm good. I just wanted to make sure I saw that and raised a red flag. So.
I had a few questions ahead of time. Appreciate you getting the answers to me. And I know that everybody got that. So,
Good questions are good.
Anything else?
I do want to point out, a year ago at this point, Jim, what was our estimated cost for the entire AC project?
Close to 7 million, 6.8,
And we're going to be at?
around 5.
Wow.
So I just want to point out that we're starting the master facility plan with our first project
Budget.
ahead of the game.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Assuming board
Very
approval.
good. That was
I think we're ready.
Okay. Rick Rovenato.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
aye.
Dan Nicholas.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, approval of the contract to provide special education transportation services. So we need a motion for the Board of Ed to approve the contract with Sunrise Southwest LLC to provide special education transportation services to our district for the 3 years ending June 30th, 2021, and to authorize the board president and board secretary to sign the agreement.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Any
Okay.
discussion?
Turn this over to Mark to just give you the highlights.
Yeah, you've heard me talk about other busing issues with the economy coming back around, and it's been very difficult to secure drivers. Compound that with Septran had a big changeover in administration and their ownership, and has not really been very organized. We've had very bad service from Septran. Last year, there was a rebid, was after the second year of a 3-year contract, that only Septran was the low bidder, but they wanted a 2% or 4% this year, and then a 32% increase the following year, which would be this year. So we rejected that. It actually was done by Sam Kanata, the business manager for SASED, who coordinated this for 11 other districts. And the decision was just to go out again this year for a 3-year bid. Sunrise was the low bidder on this with a 24% increase, still very high, but we're seeing ranges of 24 to 30, 35%, especially in special ed, because there's just more things involved with special needs students. There's usually fewer, sometimes they're one individual, one student going to one spot. But Sunrise does about 80% of the special ed schools in Chicago, so they have a very large base to work from. Actually, about 8 years ago, Septran gave us pretty good service. The owner of that company is Bob Hock, and he left that company and started Sunrise. And from that point on, Septran kept degrading. So District 58 used Sunrise last year. The business manager there, Dave Bine, had used Sunrise in his other previous job in Maine, the elementary system there. So he was absolutely sure he wanted to go to Sunrise last year, and we thought we would just wait and see how their service was, and they had great service. So they come highly recommended, and we've already had a couple meetings to work out possibly getting more and more of our kids involved under their umbrella, because we have homeless kids that sometimes we have to taxi or that are very difficult. We're using really 2 or 3 providers for some of these, just for some of the kids on the outskirts that Septran has just not been able to handle. And so we'd like to get them all under one company, get this one rate, and also try and coordinate some of the pickups for the different students and actually drop-offs so that we can reduce the overall cost. So we try and avoid some of that 24% by just being a little more efficient if we can. We're at least going to try. The good part about this is that special ed transportation is still reimbursed by the state. It's supposed to be 80%. It's usually in the 70s, but because they prorate it down from their 80%. So the lion's share of the cost that we have for special needs students transportation is reimbursed. So the net cost to us for this year is around a $65,000 increase over last year. And so we really don't have any choice but to accept this bid, and we're optimistic that we can maybe cut down that $65,000 increase by being more efficient.
Any questions from her?
Terry Pavasich?
Aye.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Rick Pavanato?
Aye.
Don Renner?
Aye.
Mike Davenport?
Aye.
And Nancy Kupfer?
Aye, motion carries. Next, we need a motion for the Board of Education to approve medical and dental plan premiums for the 2018 conversion period as presented.
So moved.
Mike,
I'll second.
Terry?
All right.
Okay, so it's,
Turn this one back over to Mark.
yeah, we've still got a couple more folders here, guys, so we, one of those weeks.
It's dwindling.
Yeah. We talked about a couple meetings back about the shift of the insurance committee's recommendation to shift from a fiscal year, which ends at the end of August 25th, and go to a calendar year plan year for our health and dental plans. It's more what happens in the corporate world. It solves one particular problem for us in that when we have the August year-end plan, we have to enroll at the end of the school year, and which is now moving up to the, closer and closer, earlier and earlier in the year. And we have to estimate what the claims are going to be for a larger period of time. So we have to estimate, we have to make some of the decisions in terms of enrollment and premium changes and benefit changes in March, which means we can only get real information through February when we need to renew and have an open enrollment for our largest groups to be, most of our employees don't work a 52 a week. They're out for the summer, so that getting that enrollment done early before they break, has been giving us tough information to work with, and little information to work with. So by going to a calendar year, we can just continue the program through and have a November open enrollment. We'll probably get 2 to 3 months more active real claims when we make our decisions, so we'll be able to make better decisions. Because there's been times the insurance committee has had to make adjustments because of our projected claims and reduced benefits, and that has probably been too severe of a reduction because it's lasted 2 or 3 years. There's a couple years where we'll have 0, then we'll have a 15% or something. So we're trying to smooth out that so we have better information when we go into open enrollment.
The other thing it allows is for families with a partner that's on an insurance plan to compare our plan to their family member's plan at the same time, because open enrollment tends to open for all companies around that time. So it allows employees to have more information, make more informed decisions at that time.
Right. The insurance committee is hoping if we make some cuts in the PPO plans, that we will be able to go forward with 0 increase all the way through the next calendar year. All I'm asking for tonight, though, is for the approval for the rates for the conversion period, which will be September through the end of this calendar year. And then in November, we'll have another open enrollment. So in October, we'll come back to the board and just confirm that these rates are going to hold up for another calendar year, or with a couple more years of experience, a couple more months of claim experience, we may have to make a change or an increase in the plan. But this is the only changes that were recommended by HUB and agreed to by the insurance committee to bring forward as a recommendation is over here on the PPO side. You see in the red an adjustment on just the out-of-network cost. It's only out-of-network. So if you stay in the network in the PPOs, you'll have no change and hopefully no increase in the premium for the next calendar year, all the way through the next calendar year. So, and there, it's going from 70% on the Plan B to, actually, that's staying the same, but going, let me get sure I get this right. We're going from an 80-70 to a 70-60 out of network for the co-insurance benefit. So that's the biggest piece, and the out-of-pockets are going up as well. So it's the adjustment, this actually should put us with a little bit of room to say that we think we'll be able to go with 0 increase next year and be able to absorb it. Another thing, I don't have the charts here for you, but it was in the embodied in the memo, that the reserve is come back to right where we would like it to be. It's right in the middle of our range where we'd like to keep it, so we have a very safe reserve in case we do have to eat some costs next year without raising premiums. So this is just a recommendation for the conversion period through the end of the calendar year, September through December, for our rates. And if we go to the next exhibit, Tony, it's really just telling you that nothing's going to increase. Everything is 0 all the way down. So there's 0 increases, but we like to put it out this way so that we can tie it to all of our renewal and open enrollment information for our staff.
You probably talked about this in the committee, but just out of curiosity, how many, do you have a sense for how many people go out of network?
It doesn't happen very often because of the penalty involved. It's more expensive. So I really don't have a head count, but I don't think we have a high number. We have a very high number. We have 96, 97% is always in network for this plan. Now that's a lot of the day-to-day. There could be a couple that go outside for a specialist or something that they just intend to use that's not in the plan. But our use is really high, and it's a pretty broad network. I mean, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois has the largest network, and particularly in this part of the state where most of our employees live. So you're not going to find a broader network. We knew when we made the move to Blue Cross quite a while back that there was really no going backwards, because once you do that, now you have people that have developed relationships with different providers, and then there'd be a lot more angst and trying to trim your network down. So we have the largest network in this area.
So everybody seems to be pretty happy with them.
There's options for people, particularly in the PPO, there's, you know, a lot of options.
Okay.
Ready to vote? Go ahead.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Craig Felicich,
Aye.
Rick Cavanato,
Aye.
Don Renner,
Aye.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the resolution for the 2017 taxes. This is motion for the Board of Education to adopt the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing the DuPage County Clerk to Extend Specific Tax Rates for Tax Year 2017.
Okay, and it's me again.
We need a
We need a
motion.
motion.
So
Okay.
moved.
So moved, thanks. They're holding me. Dan,
And
Terry seconding.
We're going to continue the Mark Stalen show?
Sorry, Jeff, this is it. A lot of folders. And really, this is,
Thank you, I'm sorry.
we levy in November,
Promise to bring my, bring the next time.
but we don't know what the changes in the assessed valuation is. That all gets turned in the after the end of the calendar year. So all of the assessed valuation for last year has been identified for us, and it tells us also what new construction we had for that same period of time. We're guessing that when we do our levy in November, we have to do it either November or December of each year. You can't wait until you know that information. So we always have this procedure of having to reallocate our tax rate between the different funds because we do inflate it a little bit so that we can make sure we do capture all the new construction values that come in. Our new construction, in this case, was 0.6, or I'm sorry, 0.8, but you look at put my glasses on, 0.8, which we were hoping it would be as much as 1%. So it was really less than we expected it to be. It's still a little bit more than it was 0.7. Last year, things were moving and more, robustly, but so we were hoping it'd be a little higher. So we levied as if we were going to get the full 1%, and that's where we're having to cut this back now because we didn't get that much. So what the county clerk does is he just does a pro rata for each of the funds and cuts it by the same percentage. What we do is we like to target just one fund. The Ed fund right now has, compared to the other funds, a little bit more of a reserve, and we intended to take it out of the Ed fund when we levied it, based on what I showed you at that time. Thing is, now our interest, I'm sorry, our tax rate is going to drop again this year. That will always happen as long as the increase in the EAV, the assessed value, which is a 5.14% increase. We now have a $4.4 billion assessed valuation. And if that number is higher than the tax rate cap at 2.1, mathematically, our rate will always reduce. It'll always go down. For a couple of years after the recession, it went the other way, and that's why we were seeing it rise. And the rate continues to drop, continued this year to drop. So our total levy this year, $1.92, $1.91.84. So our tax rate, that's if somebody asks what's our tax rate, it's $1.90, $1.91, $1.92, you could say. Last year was $1.96, so it's about a 4-cent, almost 5-cent drop in our tax rate. Doesn't mean our taxes went down, just meant their house values went up higher than what our levy went up. So that's the long version. So we do need to ratify the decision. We had to turn this into the clerk within a week's time in March, and so we did that, but we'd ask the board there's a resolution here for you to ratify that allocation.
So, questions for Mark?
Go ahead.
Dan Nicholas,
Aye.
Craig Felicich,
Aye.
Rick Cavanato,
Aye.
Don Renner,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion carries. Next, we move to a motion for the Board of Education to approve the 2018-19 Board of Education meeting dates and times. Motion.
I move the Board of Education approve
So
the
moved.
2018-19.
I'll second it.
All right, so this is, as we discussed last week at the board meeting, is that every meeting will start at 6:30 next year, beginning in July. It will begin in open session. If there is an action item planned to come out of closed following open, closed following open, open following closed, where we would vote, we will inform the public before we go into closed and it'll be on the agenda as well, that's what we're planning on doing. And that allows everybody to kind of have more of a consistent plan schedule for what's going to happen. We established tonight that if someone is in route, as long as we have 4 board members here, we can start the meeting, and those en route can participate virtually. So any questions on that one?
Yeah, so if we say we have a business meeting, we have an item on the agenda that night that requires some closed session discussion before we take action in open session, would be start the meeting in open session, and you'll move that agenda item maybe towards the end, so that
Yeah, we'll even list it that way. The agenda will read, we'll get to action items, and then there'll be another agenda item that will be closed session for the purpose of whatever reason we're going into closed. And then after that, we'll have open session and action items following.
Okay.
Only if there are action items to follow. Sometimes we need to just go into closed to discuss the things with the board that are covered under Open Meetings Act that are allowed to go into closed. But if we have an actual action item, most of the time that's personnel or student discipline coming out of those closed sessions, that would be listed then as another action area.
I think this is nice. It means that unless somebody was particularly interested in that action item, they can know that the meeting's going to start at 6:30 and be able to follow along with all our business up to that point, and then not have to worry about sitting around and waiting for us to come back, unless they're really interested in that.
Right.
that
And
issue.
sometimes they will, depending on what that item is, you'll have people who stick around, but most folks that aren't impacted by those individual action items, the rest of the evening is theirs.
I love it. I love meeting at the same time, and being, when sometimes you've had somebody, right, that was interested, and you said, well, our meeting starts at 7:30, but might not start, because we're going to be in closed session, and so this is more of a definitive, I think, much more reliable situation, and then also, I know that not everything we talk about is all that exciting, so people can show up. That's right. They can get here at 6:30. They can listen to whatever they need to listen to, and head on home. So it probably even works out better for the recordings, as a matter of fact, as I think about it too. So.
The other thing, I will work with the board president to allocate time for agenda items in closed, and I'm asking the board that we try to stick to those times in closed, because the only downfall of this structure is you have forever in the evening to talk about closed session items.
It's not a hard stop.
Yes, we're going to need some hard stops on some hard conversations at times. And we can agree to move it to another one or to extend it. Julie and I have talked through setting kind of a timer, and when we reach about 5 minutes left in the conversation, informing the board just to help manage it. 5 minutes left. If we all agree that it needs more time than that, then we can all agree to that. Otherwise, we'll try to wrap up the conversation to keep the nights going along for the board.
I think we can get an egg timer.
Yeah, 3-minute timer.
That's right. The public gets 3 minutes to speak and opens. Right? We should do that in our closed sessions.
Sell our time to other
There you
members
go.
like
It was your suggestion.
We will remember that.
Write that one down.
Yeah. Be sure and put that in the minutes, please.
Remember Davenport?
Oh, my.
Be like a clean air credit. Clear the air credit.
Yeah. You're being called out.
No more 11 p.m. closed sessions.
You'll remember that too, right?
We can take jabs at Mike later. Is there any?
Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Rick Pavanato?
Aye.
Don Renner?
Aye.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Terry Pavasich?
Aye.
And Nancy Huffman.
Aye, motion carries. We'll move on to new business, policy committee report, first reading.
Sure. The policy committee met last week prior to our board workshop. There's 3 policies that we reviewed. One that's uniform grievance procedure with some updates in there. Related to that, I'll jump over to is 5.20, which is about workplace harassment, and there's some updates in that policy as well. And then there was also a small update in incurring debt. We discussed this at the policy committee. Nobody had really any concerns about these. Both Rick and Dan were present at that meeting.
All press recommended.
Yeah, they're all press
policy
recommended changes.
so, yeah.
The only key difference in our grievance procedures in any of those that list who our complaint managers are, we always change that language to direct them to the website so that if people move in and out of those roles, the board doesn't have to update policies, we just update it on the website. One of the key pieces around this is that in the workplace harassment policy, the law changed where we need to then pass a resolution once we pass that policy about the board's belief that we need to uphold the policy on workplace harassment. So once the policy is updated, assuming it is at the next board meeting, we'll also have a resolution to pass that goes along with that. So it's a little different than our normal policy ones, but that's how that one works. So for the next month, if there's anybody that has any questions on these changes or policies, you could reach out to Dan, Rick, or myself, and we're happy to talk about them. And then they'll be back next month for approval, along with that resolution that goes along with 5.20.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. We'll move to the second reception of visitors, which is intended for audience members to address the board on any topic pertaining to Community High School District 99. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes to provide all visitors an equal opportunity to address the board. If you need more time, we'll ask you to send your thoughts in writing to the board secretary. If you come to the microphone and state your full name and recognize that the proceedings are being recorded for the purpose of producing accurate.
All right, Valerie Hardy, president of Downers Grove Education Association. I thought I would model for you how to use the 3 minutes that you were just talking about. We are here on behalf of DGA just to officially invite the board members and the District 99 administration to the upcoming Walk for Public Education that the Downers Grove Education Association has been behind, endorsing, and planning over the past, 6, 7, 8 months. This came to our board last year, an idea of a way to kind of recognize the good work that teachers were doing, but not just to pat ourselves on the back, also a great way to just celebrate the school system that our community offers. And we thought that it was a great time now, kind of riding on the coattails of the referendum that just passed, a way to kind of continue to build that positive community momentum. And so each of you is going to be getting, maybe I'll work with Julie to help pass those around after the meeting or when the members who aren't here today are around. We just wanted to use this walk as a way to create community support for the great services that are provided to students through public education. It never hurts for us to kind of counter with some positive public relations efforts, some of the negative media attacks against teachers. We know that none of that is true. We know that educators are a cornerstone to the work that's done to support our students and to make them into the adults that are going to lead our nation going forward. So we want a chance to recognize that, to recognize the work that we do to empower students towards 21st century skills and the work that they will do going forward with those, to celebrate the diversity that both the teachers and the students bring to our community here, and just the overall value that our education system presents to our community. This is not only for District 99, though it is sponsored by DGA. It is open to the public. It's open to anybody who supports public education. So we do officially invite all of you to attend if you can. It's on May 6th in the afternoon. We are very hopeful that the weather will not be snowy or gusty, although it sounds like we want to generate some power for North High and South High maybe. So we won't totally frown on that, but we're hoping for a nice day. It starts at 1 o'clock from South High in the parking lot, and so thank you to Ed for letting us use the building and for the district for allowing us to start on that campus. It will be approximately a 1-mile walk to McCullum Park, right over there on Main Street, and it will end with some celebrations. So it is family friendly. We will have bounce houses for the kids, snacks, bags, games, etc. There will be a pet costume contest. So any of you who are pet lovers, there will be a little bit of a fun side there. And so just a great event that's coming up that we're really excited about. I would be remiss if I did not publicly recognize Mike Tompkins, who's in the back here, who has spearheaded this from the start, and his committee, which includes DGA members from both North, South, and Transition 99. So we will have that invitation to you, both board and administration, and we hope that we'll see at least some of you out there on May 6th.
Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to approach the board? Looking forward to it. Okay, we'll do
I just wrote it down.
some reports on communications and announcements. Do we have a report on Lund?
We haven't met since the last time I updated the board. Our next meeting's not this Friday, but the next.
Okay. SACID, let me just pull it back up here, sorry. We continue to work towards getting a replacement for Dr. Volpe, who will be retiring, and we will have our next meeting on April 25th. So I really don't have anything more to report, because I wasn't at the last meeting. 99 Education Foundation?
Yeah, a couple of things. Thank you for approving the funds to go for the 360 camera. That was really fun. And we do have the Avid banquets coming up April 25th for North and May 2nd for South. We are giving 2 students from each school $500 scholarships. So that's a really great project, and that. And then we'll be doing the Attainable Futures. We're going to the May luncheon on May 9th. And the North and South students get an opportunity to enhance their resume building and interviewing and networking skills. So it's a really important project for those kids. And then we are going to be doing more teacher learning grants. Like I said, we've got several that we did tonight, and then those will be due May 7th. And we will be granting checks for the ones that we've done on that night. And then we're still looking for volunteers, so anyone would like to join the foundation, please either contact myself or Julia Beckman. And then just an FYI, Joanne Smith at the Transition Center has been working on the straw bale gardening, and we were going to plant this week, but I don't think Mother Nature is really in our corner. So we are postponing the planting process until May 8th or 9th, depending upon the weather. So anybody's welcome to come over and take a look at that. It'll probably be in the afternoon. And our students and any community members want to come over and take a look at that and participate. It's really a fun thing, and the straw bales are out there conditioning, so you can come over and take a look at them. So it's exciting, and so that's about it.
Thanks, Terry. Mike, Illinois Association of School Boards?
I have nothing to say.
Okay, so I do though. Upcoming board meetings, May 7th, we'll have a special workshop here at 7 p.m. On May 14th, we'll have the Board Parent Teacher Advisory Committee meeting at 6 p.m. in the South Library High. And May 21st, we'll have our regular business meeting at 7:30 p.m. here at the ASC.
And it's hard to believe graduation is coming up.
Right around the corner, can you believe it?
I find that so hard to believe, especially when I look outside.
Yeah, hopefully it won't be snowing at Gray.
Yeah, let's
There's
hope.
a calendar in my kitchen.
We may be indoors.
Don't have to worry about air
Heat on.
Heat on,
With the heat up.
Yeah, with the heat on.
Motion to adjourn? So moved. Terry?
Seconded.
Dan? Seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.